I'm going to talk to you about faith today in our series called The Stories. We're looking at 9 of the parables, 9 of the stories that Jesus told. There were about 40, 39, 40, 41, depending on how you interpret them. And they're recorded in the New Testament. You probably know that Jesus was a storyteller. He told stories. In fact, Mark wrote this: all Jesus did that day was tell stories. His storytelling fulfilled the prophecy, I will open my mouth and tell stories. I will bring out into the open things hidden since the world's first day. Jesus loved to tell stories, and we call them parables. And sometimes we misunderstand parables. A guy named C.H. Dodd, who was a Welsh theologian, said this. I want you to hear this about stories, specifically about parables. In its simplest, the parable is a metaphor or simile, get this, drawn from nature or common life, arresting the hearer by its vividness or strangeness and leaving the mind in sufficient doubt about its precise application so that it teases us into active thought. And that's been our goal the last few weeks and going forward, is we've been trying to tease ourselves into active thought. And this is what Jesus did when he told parables. He would leave just enough of the story for you to think, what does that mean? What does that exactly mean? How does that apply? What is Jesus saying? So our goal in this series has been to tease us into active thought. So far we've examined the parable of the wedding banquet. Last week, the parable of the scattered seeds. Today, the parable of the mustard seed. It's a story about what it means to have faith in God. Now, as I begin here, I want to do something. I want to take like a little side road. And I want to make a distinction. I want to make a distinction between faith and hope. Think of faith, think of hope. I love the word hope because it is so encouraging. Just one word. There's certain words that are just great words. Grace is a great word. Love is a phenomenal word. You know another great word? Hope. I love the word hope because it's so encouraging. It's so positive. But many people believe hope and faith are pretty much the same thing. So they use the words interchangeably. But from our story today, what we're going to learn is there is a subtle but distinct difference between hope and faith. One great example of hope is a place called Hope Breakfast Bar. Anybody been there? Hope Breakfast Bar. Many of you, okay. There are 3, I've never been there, but I've heard about it. I'd like to go. But I looked up on their website, and it just says, believe in breakfast. You got to love that. Right there, you know it's going to be a great place. And then it says, continuing our unwavering connection to the community, Hope Breakfast Bar donates 3%. Get this. They donate 3% of all sales to our neighbors in need through our nonprofit Give Hope. I've never been in the restaurant business, but I hear the margins are very small. Can you imagine giving 3% of your profits away right off the top to give people hope? See, hope at its best is optimistic. Listen, let me read 3 kind of definitions of hope. Hope is a feeling of expectation and desire for a certain thing to happen. Here's another one. Hope is a person or thing that may help or save someone, as in their only hope is surgery. Here's another one. Hope is grounds for believing that something good may happen. He does, here it is, a saying, he does see some hope in his future. When we have hope, we use phrases like, I'm hoping for the best, in hopes of, or just plain, I'm hopeful. But you know what? Hope can also be kind of pessimistic because we have doubts about hope. And we can say it this way: I hope so. I've lost all hope. You know what? I just feel hopeless. Now, in my life, I've experienced times of hopelessness, been pretty low, especially the last 2.5 years. I've never had feelings like that, like I have the last 2.5 years in my life. So I've had times of hopelessness. But I have also had times of great hope the last 2.5 years. It's been an interesting ride. My guess is you have experienced this as well. Now I'm going to stop and just say, some of you are saying, Rod, I thought this was on faith. Why are you talking about hope so much? Well, as I said, hope and faith are not the same thing. Let me illustrate this just to make the distinction a little bit clearer, because I want us to get this in our hearts. And here's what I want to say. Let's just say someone you love is very sick, or they're in a very dangerous situation, someone you love very much, and someone comes up to you and says, so are they going to make it? Are they going to be okay? You say, I'm hopeful. Yeah, you know what? I hope so. I hope so. Okay, that's one way. Same situation. Someone you love is in danger, has a serious illness. Someone comes up to you and says, are they going to be okay? Are they going to make it? And you say this, you know what? I have faith in God. See the difference? I hope, which is great. I have faith in God. The first one is limited to human effort, positive thinking. The second one is fully dependent on God. And see, while we all have a need for hope, we have a greater need to have faith in God. So we're going to read this parable now that Jesus told about a mustard seed. And I want you to note this morning 3 important lessons about faith, not about hope, but about faith. As we begin to read, I want to tell you where we're going to read, just so we have some context. Just before the narrative we're going to read, Jesus and 3 of his disciples had been up a mountain. They had had this powerful experience that New Testament writers call the Transfiguration. You can read about it. It's amazing what happened. And they had been up in the mountain. And as they're coming down, Jesus, Peter, James, and John are coming down the mountain. And they approach where the other 9 disciples have been waiting with a group of people. That's where we pick up the story. And so let's take a look. Matthew 17:20. At the foot of the mountain, a large crowd was waiting for them. A man came and knelt before Jesus and said, Lord, have mercy on my son. He has seizures and suffers terribly. He often falls into the fire or into the water. So I brought him to your disciples, but they couldn't heal him. So as wonderful as hope is, there comes a time in all of our lives when we need something more. We need to have faith in God. We need something more than hope. Someone you love passes away. Somebody you didn't expect to pass away, and they pass away. Or someone you know or yourself, you face a terminal illness. Your son or daughter is battling a debilitating mental illness or sickness. You personally are dealing with depression or feelings of loss or even suicide, and you're not sure you can go on. That's often when you lose hope. You feel hopeless. So at that point, you need more than hope. You need a miracle. You need faith in God. Here in our story, we see a father who is desperate for his son to be healed. In this case, his son is being tormented by demonic spirits who from time to time take control of his body and put him in dangerous situations. Now, we can just be pretty sure here, we don't have it in the text, but we can be pretty sure this father has done everything humanly possible to help his son. But now he realized he needed something more. I mean, it hoped enough. He needed something more. He needed something supernatural. See, the supernatural is where faith comes in. But as we read, we see that while we all have a need for faith, we need the supernatural. We come to the point where we just need something more. What we find out is some people just never embrace it. We have a need. All of us get to the point where we have that need. But some people just choose not to embrace faith. Let's take a look. Jesus said, you faithless and corrupt people. You faithless and corrupt people. How long must I be with you? How long must I put up with you? Bring the boy here to me. Then Jesus rebuked the demon in the boy, and it left him. From that moment on, the boy was well. Raiders of the Lost Ark. How many of you remember this movie? Okay, most of you. There's a scene where Harrison Ford, who plays Indiana Jones, the very first one, he's facing this huge guy dressed in black, and he's this chase scene, and all of a sudden he comes, this huge guy, very intimidating. He pulls out this huge sword, and he does this incredible, intimidating stuff in front of him just to totally scare him to death, right? And then Harrison Ford or Indiana Jones kind of rolls his eyes, pulls out a pistol, and just shoots him. And it's like over. Now, maybe not the best analogy, but that's sort of what I think Jesus did here. I feel like Jesus came down, and he just kind of like sort of rolled his eyes and went, okay, we'll take care of this. And the narrative goes that he just went over there, rebuked the demon, and from that moment on was great. And so what's going on here? I mean, Jesus has this ability to just rebuke this demon, this intimidating demon to this father who's torturing the son. Jesus rebukes the boy, and as I said, from that moment on, the boy was well. And at first reading, maybe this happened to you when I read it, at first reading, it seems like Jesus is sort of harsh. He calls the disciples, and he calls some of the people around, he says, "You faithless and corrupt generation." But I want you to hear this. Jesus is not frustrated because he thinks the disciples have not worked up enough faith. I want you to hear this. Jesus is not frustrated with them because he thinks the disciples have not worked up enough faith. He's disappointed that they tried to bring healing to the boy without faith. See, faith is not working up enough belief. Sometimes that's what we think it is. I got to get somehow more faith. I must not have enough faith. Or the reason that didn't happen is because I don't believe enough. I didn't believe hard enough. This is sometimes how we interpret this. Folks, faith is not some kind of magic mind game that you conjure up by using the right words. Faith is simply, I want you to hear this, the belief in the power of God to do anything. Faith is belief in the power of God to do anything. And you know what? Most of you in this room, you believe that. God can do anything. That's faith. In the Message translation, Eugene Peterson translates Jesus' words here a bit more softly than the translation that I read to you, and I think it's right. Jesus turns to the disciples when they weren't able to rebuke this demon, and he says, here's the thing, you guys. You don't take God seriously. You don't take God seriously. Most Bible scholars believe that the disciples had been trying to cast out this demon with their own ability, with their own strength, with their own wishful thinking, with their own, somehow I got to work up my faith more. And here Jesus said, you don't take the power of God seriously. They overestimated their own power and underestimated the power of God. And Jesus wants them and each of us to know that some things are only going to happen, some things are only going to change, some things are only going to get better, some things are only going to be healed when we admit that we can't do this on our own ability, we can't hope enough, we just have to put our faith in God. Just put our faith in God. Now here's the good news. All of us can do this. All of you can do this. I can do this. See, we all have a need for faith. There comes a time in our life we have a need for faith. Hope just isn't doing it for us. And while some will never choose to have faith in God, listen, all of us can choose to grow in our faith in God. We can grow. Let's read the rest of the story. Afterward, the disciples asked Jesus privately, why couldn't we cast out that demon? Jesus, you don't have enough faith, Jesus told them. I tell you the truth, if you had faith even as small as a mustard seed, you could say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it would move. Nothing would be impossible. Recently, my wife Melody and I visited the graves of her parents. We try to do this at least once a year. It's something we enjoy doing. We go to the gravesite, and we just stand there maybe 5 or 10 minutes. We kind of clean off the site. We talk about them. What happens a lot of times when we do this is stories come up. And oftentimes Melody will tell a story. This last time I heard 2 new stories. And if you've been married more than 2 or 3 years, and you think you've told each other all your stories, you haven't. And if you've been married 43 years, like Melody and I, 42 years, we're in our 43rd year, you still get new stories if you'll just tell stories. And so as we were walking away, she said, you know what? When I was in the 7th grade, my dad took me to school and picked me up at school every day. And she said, I wish I could tell my dad thanks for doing that. And then as we were driving home, she talked about the fact that when she was a little girl, she lived in North Minneapolis, and back in those days, they had corner stores. And there was Buford's. She always talks about Buford's, North Minneapolis. And she would go to her dad and say, Dad, can I have some money to go to Buford's? And her dad would say, always called her Sweetie, Sweetie, yeah, go upstairs on my dresser, you can take money. He never doubted that she would take too much. In fact, she always came down and said to her dad, Dad, I'm taking this much money. And he was like, yeah, that's fine. But if you know my wife, and not all of you do, but believe me, my wife took exactly the amount of money she needed. She knew exactly what she wanted. She knew what candy she wanted. She knew exactly how much money she needed. And she would take just that much and go down and say, Dad, I'm taking this much. He'd go, that sounds great, sweetie. And off she'd go. Here's the thing. If she wanted to get more candy, applying this to faith, if she wanted to get more candy, she needed more money. If she wanted to buy a bike at Target, she needed more money. And that's how many of us believe faith works. For bigger miracles, we need bigger faith. But what did little Melody believe more than that she had enough money to buy the candy she wanted to buy? This is important. She believed in the power of the money itself. She didn't doubt that the money would get her the candy. She took the power of the money seriously. So we think we just need more. We need more. What we need to do is believe in faith. We need to believe in God. We just need to go, God can do this. I don't have to work it more and more. I just got to go, I believe in the power of God. Jesus was saying here, you don't need more faith. You need more trust in what God is able to do. You need to take God seriously. And to illustrate just how powerful, here's where the story comes in. Here's where the parable comes in. And to illustrate just how powerful even a tiny amount of faith or belief in God can be, Jesus says this, even if you have trust in God the size of a mustard seed, you can move mountains. Now this move a mountain phrase was very popular in Jesus' day. They would have known exactly what this means. Something little, you can do something really big. And so he used the popular phrase, you can take this tiny little bit of faith, this tiny little bit of taking God seriously, just a tiny bit. Do you take God seriously? I do. I do, just a little bit. Good for you. You have enough faith. Oh, don't I need more? Well, you can grow more, but if you have this much, this is how powerful it is. You can move a mountain. Some of you like hot food. How many of you like really hot food? Just raise your hand. Okay, 4 of you. Okay, we're in Minnesota. So I'm Swedish. I like beige food. The hottest pepper in 2022 is the Carolina Reaper. Just a tiny bit of that pepper, and you are reaching for water or you're rushing to the bathroom. Then there's fall curry. I'm probably saying this wrong. Fall curry. Fall is considered the hottest curry in the world. Chefs who prepare fall curry wear gas masks when preparing and cooking it. When we take the power of God seriously, and that's what faith is, listen, taking the power of God seriously, then even faith or the belief in the power of God as small as a mustard seed can move a mountain. Faith as small as small as a mustard seed can change a diagnosis, can turn your child around, can bring you healing from your hurt, surprise, or can supply your seemingly impossible need. I'm going to conclude this message, and I want to illustrate this a bit better. I'm going to invite our ushers to come and hand something to all of you right now. Obviously, you don't have to take one of these, but I hope you do. And so, ushers, if you would come, I'm going to hand you or give to you today a mustard seed, and I just want you to see the size of it so we can get this in perspective. And I want to encourage you because I want us to grow in our faith today. And so we're going to pass these out. The ushers are going to pass these out. If you would just take one of these. As they're passing it out, I'm going to tell you a story that I've told a few times in a sermon. A number of years ago, probably 10 or 12 years ago, my son and my son-in-law, it was about 11:30 at night. We were sitting in the living room. It was a Sunday night. We used to have family prayer on Sunday nights. And my son and my son-in-law both had a really rough week. They were very discouraged. They had lost all hope. I won't go into detail about what they had lost hope about, but they were really down. And we were having this prayer time, and Melody, my wife, could see that they were really discouraged. And so she went into the kitchen, and she got mustard seeds. And she went over to my son and told him to put his hand out, and she dropped a mustard seed into the palm of his hand. And you can see, if you've got it now, you can see how tiny those are. And I'll wait till you all, but I really want you to see this, because Jesus knew exactly what he was doing here, and he was talking about this, how tiny amount of trust in God's power, it can move a mountain. So you look in this little container, you see how tiny the mustard seed is. So Melody dropped it in my son's hand and said, "Now, Reed, do you have that much faith?" And he said, "Yeah, I guess so." You know what? That was enough. Even a guess so. And then she dropped it in my son-in-law's hand, Matt. He dropped it into his palm, and it fell out of his palm into the carpet. We couldn't find it. So she had to go get another one. And it was indicative of where he was at. But anyway, she dropped another one into his hand and said, "Now, Matt, do you have that much faith about what God can do right now in your life?" And he said, "Yeah, I guess." That was enough. Even, "Yeah, I guess." Yeah, I guess. It can move a mountain. Let me say this to you, because some of you just need to hear this. If you just believe in God, you have a mustard seed of faith. You just believe in God. Say, "I'm not sure about all the miracles. I'm not sure about all this. I don't know about all this, but I do believe in God. I believe in the God of the Bible. I believe in God." You have a mustard seed of faith. Now, it can grow, but you have enough to move a mountain. If you believe in miracles, if you believe God can heal, if you believe God created the world, if you just believe in God, you already have this much faith. So before we go today, I want to give us a chance to have our faith grow. I want to have a chance to have our faith grow. I want to ask you to take that little vial that you have there and just take a good look at that mustard seed, and how tiny that is. And I want to tell you that you have that much faith. And I want to encourage you to take that much faith and put that trust in God today for the mountain in your life. Okay? Whatever the mountain in your life is. And we're going to pray together. And I want you to right now just to think about, what is the mountain right now in your life that is pretty overwhelming, that has caused you to be hopeless? Hope's just not doing it for you. What is the mountain that's there that you're going to take this mustard seed of faith, and you're just going to say, "You know what, God? I'm going to take you seriously. I know you can move this mountain in my life." So would you bow your heads with me? First of all, let me just pray for some of you are here today. What this amount of faith means that you have, that you're holding right now, this amount of faith is that amount of faith you have to receive Jesus. So there are some of you who've come today, some of you are watching online, and you've been part of this worship service, been listening to this message, you've been here, you felt the presence of God. You haven't quite been sure about Christian faith, you haven't quite been sure about Jesus, but today is your day because you hold in your hand what you know to be true, that you do trust the power of God and you trust Jesus. You really do believe in Jesus. But you've never taken that, you've never grown that little mustard seed just a little bit to receive Jesus as your Lord and Savior. And right now, I want to encourage you to do that. Just as you're here today or you're home watching, you're watching online, I want to just encourage you to open your heart to Jesus right now. Take that little mustard seed of faith and say, Jesus, truth is, I really do believe in you. I trust the power of God right now. I really do believe in you. And I believe that you're the Son of God. I believe you died on that cross. I believe you rose again. I want to invite you to come into my life and forgive my sin and be Lord of my life. Lord, I pray your blessing on every person who just opened their hearts and received you into their heart and life. They believed, they received. Now they just want to follow you and obey and trust you, and I pray your blessing on their lives. Now, I just want to pray as we have our heads bowed. There's some of you, this mountain is where you are right now emotionally. This mountain has to do with your child. This huge mountain has to do with a job, or it has to do with a relational burden. You've lost all hope. Or this has to do with just a financial need. What is your mountain? Okay? Can you just tell God, you know what? I'm going to take you seriously, God. And I'm going to put my faith in you that you're going to move this mountain. You might move it exactly the way I want it to be moved. You might move it in a way I don't expect. You might even move it in a way at first I don't want it to be moved, but I trust you, and I'm putting my faith in you, and I believe you're going to move this mountain. Now, our Heavenly Father, I thank you that we're growing together in faith. I pray that you take all of us to a new place and a new understanding of faith. Help us, Lord, to act upon even a mustard seed size faith. And I pray that over the next few days and the next few weeks, we'd have stories from this room, people in this room, who will be able to say, I can't believe how God did it or what God did, and I didn't even expect God was going to do it this way. But God moved a mountain. So, Lord, I pray for that. I believe for that in all of our lives today, and I thank you. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Well, thanks everybody for being here today, for being a part of our worship service. Thank you for those of you watching online. We'd love to pray with you today. In fact, if you open your heart to Jesus, Jim and Nancy, we prayed earlier today. They were walking through here praying for all of you. So I want to encourage you, if you need prayer today, for any need, maybe you just need encouragement, whatever it is, don't leave today. Even if it's your first time and you came here in need, come down and pray with Jim and Nancy. They'd love to pray with you. If you gave your life to Christ today, open your heart to Christ today. Come down and let them know and let them pray for you, because we'd love to do that. If you're not able to come down and pray right now, you can go to our website. You can click on Connect and Prayer and Care, and then you can give us your prayer request, and we'll pray for you this week, because that's another way we can pray for you. And if you did put your mustard seed size faith in Jesus today, as I mentioned just a second ago, another helpful thing is you go to our website, you hit connect, and then it says follow Jesus. You click on that. It's a very helpful tool. We'd love to help you on your journey and what it means to follow Jesus. Now, next week, next Sunday, one of the maybe more well-known parables of Jesus told, to the parable of the rich fool who had an abundant crop one year, and he didn't know what to do with it all. And what he did with it caused Jesus to call him a rich fool. And it's a powerful message about how we can make riches become our God instead of God. It's just a great story, and I hope you'll join us next week, either here in person or online, as we look at another parable of Jesus. If you brought an offering today, you can do that right out in the lobby. There are 2 black boxes, and you can put an offering in there. And then, of course, I hope you'll hang around a little bit. We have some coffee in the big room. It's a great way to connect and talk to some people. God bless you. Thanks for coming today. We'll see you.